And good afternoon, I'm Chief Meteorologist Chris Franklin with a bit busier day out in the tropics. We do have Fiona, a new named tropical storm, maybe not exactly where you're thinking. Plus, we are still watching a wave moving toward the Caribbean. Let's take a look at Fiona to start. Fiona, still a major hurricane. It became our first major hurricane of the season at 1 a.m. this morning when it gained winds of Category 3 status. Now the storm is moving north of the Turks and Caicos, so still some hurricane force conditions there. Heavy rainfall, strong winds, high swells from the water of the seas, but this does look like it's going to continue moving northward at a slow clip at only 8 miles an hour. It would be nice for those folks if it moved a little bit faster, although the folks now in Bermuda are watching this one moving toward the island. Let's colorize the satellite to show those intense cloud tops around a very well-developed eye. And as we've been saying, once it got back over the Atlantic waters north of the Dominican Republic, there really wasn't going to be anything to hinder further development of this system, and that is exactly what we have seen. The forecast continues moving it eventually as a 4 toward Bermuda. The center may be staying just to the west of the island, but that does put the worst part of the storm, the wet eastern side of the storm, over the island as we get into the day on Thursday. Then what's incredible is that as this system becomes from tropical to then extratropical, it still is likely to have winds in excess of 100 miles per hour even by the time it reaches the Canadian Maritime. So this is going to be a very powerful storm once it even moves into the North Atlantic and moves into Canada. So this looks like it's going to be possibly a very dangerous storm for those maritime provinces with very strong winds, high seas as that continues moving northward. Elsewhere, we do have Tropical Storm Gaston, but as I said, maybe not exactly where you were thinking. This was an area we started to focus on yesterday as an area of potential development. It was being given a medium % chance. It became an invest, and then now at Gaston. But it's going to be quickly moving up into the North Atlantic and is never going to impact land at all. Maybe some of the islands well to the west of Portugal could be impacted by some of the higher surf, but that would be about it. So really our focus is down south. This is Invest 98 now. Doesn't mean it's any better organized. It just means now computer models are able to run on this. And this really had been more of our focus once we started to get indications that we might see something develop just to the east of the Caribbean. Now let's kind of focus in on that area. And as you see on satellite, this is not a well-organized system. You don't see, even from the low-level clouds, any kind of real surface circulation. It is just an unorganized area of thunderstorms, actually at a fairly low latitude. So it is almost to the, say, east-southeast of Trinidad and Tobago, so it's at a very low latitude. However, as models are just now starting to come in, notice some actually have a kind of clipping Venezuela before eventually making more of a northwesterly motion into the Caribbean. Now, note with the motion in the Caribbean, it looks like over the next several days it'll be generally a northwesterly or westerly motion. Once more into the central Caribbean, models really do split, with some moving it into Central America, a few more having it move toward the Yucatan Channel, maybe even western Cuba. So if that is the case, that may be when we're paying a little bit more attention to it. That timing would be probably about Monday or Tuesday. So still, we've got a long way to go. This is almost a full week out before it's even nearing the Yucatan Channel and possibly into the Gulf of Mexico. Now, as we look at just the two GFS and Euro models, and again, these are looking at low pressure centers, so it's trying to find where a center or at least an area of circulation is trying to develop. Whether or not that's a well-defined area of circulation, the model is trying to find a low pressure center. So there's Fiona. As that moves away, we're going to be focusing on Invest 98. Going to be very close to land in the coming days, and then as we head through the rest of the end of the week and weekend, starting to move toward Jamaica and maybe the Yucatan Channel. The Euro GFS, decent agreement with that placement. The Euro a little bit faster than the GFS, but basically both indicating no, it's not going to move into Central America. It'll continue along toward the Yucatan Channel. So based on those two models, here's kind of the possible steering that we're looking at. It looks as though both of those models are are indicating this motion more toward the northwest than, say, west-northwest or west, due to the fact that we're going to have this deep upper trough moving in by early next week. In fact, this deep upper trough early next week is going to be sending a cold front our way and will bring in some slightly milder but less humid air as we get into Monday and through much of next week. So this system will be bringing us a cold front, but it also may start to draw the storm toward the Gulf of Mexico. Then the models are a little bit different, but actually in fairly decent agreement, maybe not the exact same reasons for that agreement. Let me take you through maybe the end of next week. And again, this is all now going beyond 10 days, which means the model accuracy is very, very low. So I hesitate to even show this, but just trying to get a raw idea now as to what the models may be thinking. And again, this could dramatically change as we head into the weekend and early next week. Again, it's possible this thing just keeps moving toward the west, misses that upper trough, moves into Central America, and is never a threat to the Gulf of Mexico at all. Very much still on the table. As a matter of fact, all options right now are on the table. But just based on the GFS and the Euro thinking, here's what it is possible that we could see as we head toward next week. Now, based on the GFS, we're going to have a strong upper high off the east coast of Florida. It looks like based on the western extent of this high, it's going to start drawing the storm northward towards somewhere maybe more along the northeastern coast of Florida. Again, this is next Thursday and Friday. I really hesitate with these long-range scenarios, but just kind of, again, putting that out there, this is a low confidence forecast as of right now. So the GFS is thinking it's going to be drawn northward somewhere along maybe the northeastern coast of the Gulf of Mexico by the end of the week, thanks to this upper high. Now, the GFS not completely different in its thinking, somewhere in the eastern Gulf of Mexico, but for a different reason. The Euro has this deep upper trough along the east coast, whereas the GFS is not really indicating that. Note the position of the high in the Euro is still well off to the east, so the storm isn't feeling the impacts of the high. It's being drawn northward because of this upper trough, and if this trough axis, meaning where you see the winds making that turn, looks to be more along the east coast, it's possible that we see the storm make more of an impact along the Florida peninsula and not even really the Big Bend area, maybe all along the state of Florida as it were to continue moving toward the north. So the models are in decent agreement right now, but perhaps for completely different reasons as we head into next week. Normally, I would not even show you these type of graphics only because they are so far out in the future and there is so much that can change. Just the slight nuances of the storm itself. If it is a fairly weak storm, may not move that far north, may not feel the impacts of that initial first trough that doesn't even draw it toward the Gulf of Mexico at all. I'm only showing you this because that data is now getting out there, being shared on social media, so I'm trying to better explain what we're looking at. The possible scenarios are almost countless as of right now. I'm basing these two on just the GFS and the Euro thinking that it will make it toward the Gulf, and both the models indicating more eastern Gulf of Mexico toward the end of next week. So we still have a lot of time to watch this system. We have days to prepare. Just know that through the weekend, we're not going to have any threats in the Gulf, so we will stay quiet through the weekend and even early next week. Now, by the weekend and certainly into early next week, we will know far more to see whether or not this storm is even near the Yucatan Channel and trying to move into the Gulf of Mexico. It could be that by Saturday, Sunday, this is still moving due west, Central America, not an issue for us, and we are all clear through the end of the month and going into October. Not a surprise that we do see more activity in the Atlantic Basin. It is still very much the peak of the season. We, yes, have been very quiet up until recently, and now we're starting to see September activity beginning to exponentially increase. And again, that is not a surprise. September is by far our busiest month. October is also the second busiest month of the season. So as we've said, while it has been very quiet, we are still very much in the heart of the season, and there is still a lot that could happen. Just know we are not threatened by Fiona. Gaston is going to stay out over the open water, and Invest 98, the one that we'll be watching, but for the next several days, we're not really going to know too much more than what we do now. And again, don't be surprised if you see dramatic changes to the computer computer models in the coming days, because in these early, what we call genesis stages of these systems, in other words, just as they're trying to organize the computer models, it's a guessing game. They're going to be all over the place. So more uncertainty and unknowns now than we have knowns. Just trying to help you digest some of those computer models and these graphics that you're going to see over social media over the coming days. We will try and explain those a little bit better for you while also not hyping these type of scenarios. So for now, we are watching Invest 98, but we have a long time to watch it. There are no threats for the rest of this week and on into the weekend.